And there we are. Go. All right, everybody. Money, money, money. Woo! We love it. We hate it. And we all want it to flow. Welcome to The Flow from School Live. Woo! We are here to unravel the deep questions of life, the universe, and everything. And so today we are talking about money, the big, big one. When is enough enough? When does enough turn into greed? Ooh. And what is the genuine currency of a truly fulfilled life? I absolutely want to write those three questions down because we will be addressing them. And so, first of all, welcome everybody. I'm Lisa Berry, and student of the Flow here, and I'm going to be sitting here with you guys all together here with Master Spiritual Teacher GP Walsh. Hello.
Hello.
Whom I get to raise my hand, yay, and ask questions so that we can all have some guidance and answers. So today's topic of money, I love this part, brings us to a place to truly face and at least have some awareness around our conditioning and our beliefs about money. So, GP, why does it seem that we either absolutely hate money, repel it, think it ruins things, or we love it and we love it so much that it itself, the love of money, or the people who have it, we put on this pedestal?
Yes.
My first question.
And it's a big pedestal. You know, they send themselves off into space and it's a really big pedestal.
Galactic.
Yeah. Well, one can't, we live in a time where you have to have money in order to live. It is completely intertwined with the survival mechanism. Not most of us, almost all of us, don't grow our own food anymore. And we don't, wander around the Serengeti looking for food or, chase something down, right? Which is, the way we live for millions and millions of years. So we have this very, very complex and interrelated society. And the way in which we interact with each other is money. And if it's a humane society, it's set up in such a way to make sure everybody is taken care of, and everybody gets the opportunity to develop their gifts and skills to the level that they can. That would be a humane and intelligent use of money as a tool for the well-being of human beings. But it can also become an ideal system in and of itself. That is, money can become the means by which everything gets valued, right? So, if you listen on the news, there's some disaster happened, 10 people dead and $50 million worth of damage, right? I mean, in the same sentence. Right? Yeah, some people died and we lost a lot of money.
The scope of it is measured by money.
The scope of everything. The value of something is measured by money. Is there that much difference between a $100,000 Mercedes and a $25,000 Kia? Is there really that much difference, right? Considering the Kia will probably run longer, but more miles, it'll be less expensive because it isn't really about the car anymore. It's about what it represents. And that's where we get into trouble with money, because when it becomes the means by which everything is assessed, the value of something is assessed, your value within the culture is determined by your income and your capacity to generate income, or your capacity to consume stuff so that somebody else will be able to make money. So money as a tool, we have to really understand money as a conceptual tool used as a means of being able to exchange unlike goods and services, right? Which is very valuable, right? Because if I needed, what would I have to exchange, right? I go with my my podcast to somebody who makes chairs, right? I need some chairs. Here's a podcast, right? And he goes, "What do I do with this?" Right? If you're in need of something and you don't and what you have to offer nobody else wants at that particular moment, you're screwed, right? So money's brilliant. the idea of a symbolic representation of value is brilliant, but then it takes on, like all abstractions, it takes on a life of its own. Right now, it has all sorts of meaning attached to it, and in our culture, the meaning is status. Money is associated with freedom. It's associated with not safety and survival, of course, at the most basic level. But it's also power, right? How much influence you can exert on others, right? Just
Mm.
ask any politician whose donors are all billionaires, right? They exercise total power over them. They do it. They do it. They're donors. They're not donors. They're investors.
Yeah. We're
You know,
getting
I give
paid.
10. Yeah, I get 10. I give $10 to to somebody's campaign because I believe in. That's one thing. Somebody gives $50,000 to that campaign. That's an investment.
Yeah.
They,
So
they
we'll
want
pay first.
they want to return on that money, and you can see that you can just look at what has happened to tell the negative effect, the totally destructive effect that making money the system of value has had. So making money is all that matters at that point. Now that's a value system, right? And now we want to be spiritual. We want to negate the whole thing. So money doesn't matter. Well, it does,
Yeah.
right? Because this is the system that we're in, and but we haven't taken control over it. Right? We've just kind of, and we were all raised with a certain attitude. I was raised in the United States, right, where you're going to get, you go to school, you work hard, you do your thing, you're going to have, the house, two cars, and kids in college. It's just a given. And it was such a shock when that started to fall apart in the starting with the oil crisis in the 70s, and then with Reagan just napalming the entire economy. So the only thing you can do is to begin the introspection, the self inquiry about what does money mean to me, right? Because that's the only experience you have of it, right?
Mhm.
And you use the word greed, and this is a really important one, right? Because the way Buddha used that term greed, it was any time you look for happiness outside of yourself.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Anytime, that's greed. So in that sense, we're all participating in it. A bunch of man boys taking a rocket ship to space is just the most gross appearance manifestation of it, right? But somebody who just can't wait to get the next iPhone or the 80-inch screen TV, right? Um, they're participating in exactly the same thing, and it is actually the the system of wealth is driven by the system of consuming,
Mhm.
and that lies with you and me. How much do we consume? How much can we consume? Right? And when you're consuming more than the planet can produce, you're on a collision course with disaster, and we are. That's exactly what's happening.
There's okay, so we talked about greed, we have fear, there's like questions I want to ask you, everything about the big giant question here that the word I think that I would like to sit on for this show is the word enough. And if you are watching, please give us a thumbs up and like the show, because that's how we get everybody else to keep on coming back here and doing this. And you can put some questions and stuff. This is the flow where I am the student and asking questions, but then about 3/4 way through, we get to look at some of the comments and see if there's some questions that really will help drive this show home to help everybody. And so thank you everybody for that. And I would love to share when I was growing up, my father worked and my mother was the homemaker, the stay-at-home mom. She had a full-time job, as did my father. When everybody was home, it was a family all working together. And so my parents came up with this thing, and our system was called household, right? The household. So it wasn't ever go ask your father if you can have this, or your dad is the one who makes the money. My father came up and we would sit, if you wanted something, we'd sit down and discuss if there was a need and if household could afford it. Right. So there was, and and what I learned from that is it took the hierarchy out of, like, there still was a hierarchy. We still knew that we were the children. There needed to be an agreement that
Mhm.
that there was a need, right? Or even a want, and we would address it as a want. If this is truly want, this, right? Or when we were working, I had a paper route and all that stuff. They said, do you see how much you had to work to get this money? So if you really want this Dreamtime Barbie doll, it's really going to cost you, your 3 hours of paper route and stuff. And so it was, have we lost the the relationship and the understanding of what, because Roberto said earlier, I love money, and I mean, I do too. But is it the love of money or the love? Like, yes, that's what my question is. Is so have we lost the understanding of it, or do we have the understanding, but we've just taken it too far?
Well, I don't know anybody but you who had that experience as as a child. You know? And if you were an American, they'd say you were communists. Have some kind of a communal agreement like that. But what it did was gave you guys a system of valuing,
Yes.
and there was a cooperative way of doing it. What is good for the whole, and then what is it you want, and how does that work with the whole? Right? In the United States, anyway, we don't have that. It's what works for me,
Yeah.
right? And anytime you want to talk about what's good for the whole, right? The whole of the community, the whole of the state, the whole of the country, the whole of the world. That's socialism. Oh, that's a horrible thing. So you got a very different kind of value system, right?
Mhm.
So when is enough enough, right? How do you come to that decision? If you live here, the answer is it's never enough. Anytime I'm told that I can't make more or do what I want, that's an absolute insult. That's contrary to the whole ideal system. And so how do we come up with a different set of values? That's what it comes down to. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with money, but people, you don't really want money. You want what money can get you. Now that's almost a cliche to say that, but we don't think in those terms. And one of the reasons we don't think of those terms is because most of the time we don't know what we want. If I don't know what I want, I'm going to visualize $1,000,000, right?
Right.
I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what that would do. But I substitute that for, well, what really matters to me? Now that's values, right?
Yeah.
That's a value. What really matters to me, right? And then I find out what matters to me. Now I have to look and see what the impact of fulfilling that desire is on the whole, right? And that whole just may be my family, right? The family can't afford that, or the family will have to do X, Y, and Z, and then they can afford it. And then now it's a shared thing where we're participating in setting a value. We're honoring the individual, but also honoring the group. And if we did that as a whole, we wouldn't have a climate crisis. We wouldn't be having these problems because we would be considering the impact of everything we do before we did it. We would consider it for the whole. It's not that the desires are illegitimate, right? But they are illegitimate when they threaten the whole. When one survives at the expense of others, right? You have a sick value system. Unfortunately, that's what we have. We have a value system that is necessarily self-destructive. It's like saying, the lungs are saying, I'm keeping all the air to myself. Screw you up. Just when it's just happy when you get lungs are really healthy and the rest of the body's just wilting away. Right? But the
Right.
heart says, I'm keeping all the blood for me. Yeah,
Right.
screw all you guys. Right? The heart gets really huge and bloated and and overblown. But so when is enough enough? Let me tell you a story. I saw a documentary once. And it was made by, the Johnson and Johnson company, right?
Mhm.
Multi-billionaires, right? It's a very wealthy company, and the grandson, yeah, the grandson of one of the Johnson founders, his father is now the CEO, and he just didn't want anything to do with it. Right? He became a filmmaker, and he made a documentary about his family. Right? And it was none too flattering.
Oh.
But there was one scene in particular where he was out with his father, maybe his grandfather, his uncle, some family, and a couple other men. Of course, these guys, it's all men, right? That's a whole other subject. But he had a guy hiding in the bushes with a telescope camera, and he wired himself to record the conversation while they were playing golf.
Oh.
And to get the candid remarks and the like, right? And one of the things they were talking about a bunch of stuff and talking about, money. Of course, they talk a lot about money. And his father made the comment, times are tough these days. I don't know how anybody can get by on less than 30 million a year.
Woo! So enough for him is definitely not 29
That's
million.
getting by, right? That's squeaking by, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had that. Me and the next 10 generations would be set.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm done. I could never be a billionaire. I'd stop doing anything before that. I mean, first I'd give it all away because what the hell am I going to do with that?
Yes, yeah, the things you can do with it. So this is, and I can see one of the questions coming up, and I am going to ask the question, but one just prior to it, when it comes to, so he needs $30 million. Is it because the level of skill, the availability, the other is so much more than another person? Because I think when we have to like figure out how much do we charge per hour, let's say somebody charges $500 an hour, somebody charges $100 an hour, somebody charges $7 an hour. It's very difficult. First of all, you're going to immediately, well, should we immediately feel smaller? Like, ooh, I only charge $7 an hour. You're charging 500, yet maybe we need the skill that the $7 an hour is actually providing, but the 500 is just a want or a desire, and not just, but it is.
Yeah, well, that's the distortion that's happened. The whole the world of consumerism couldn't survive without the multi-billion-dollar industry of marketing and advertising. It's constantly influencing you as to what you need. Oh, you really need to have this. You deserve this car, right?
Yeah.
And it's a psychological manipulation to try to turn what is absolutely useless and destructive into a need, and that's done through some very sophisticated psychological techniques. So how do you determine what is enough is enough?
Yeah.
And $30 million a year, is that enough? Right? See, the value when you're looking at somebody like that, or a hedge fund manager, or a Wall Street broker, their only job is to make money, right? The C-suite of a large corporation is not thinking about the customers and the product. That's a sideline. They're thinking about the stock price. So everything is defined in terms of how does it affect the price of the stock, because that's where all the wealth is. It's not in gold, it's not in silver, it's not the oil itself. It's the stock value. That's where all the wealth is, right? The value of Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos and all those guys. If the market crashed, they all become poor overnight because, I mean, they have stuff that they've accumulated, their own personal resources and things like that. When you talk about he's worth $150 billion, his stock is worth that.
Right.
Right. And so these guys guard the value of stock with their life. They'll go to war over the stock prices. Right. They don't cut their salary if there's a problem. They lay people off. Right. So there's nothing communal. There's nothing social about it. And unfortunately, this is the value system we're in, and that's how the values are set. Right. Every night on the news, all over the world is the stock prices. Right. The Dow is up. The Dow is down, as if that mattered to anybody except a tiny, tiny fraction of the people. But they also run the whole world.
Right. And that is a different world that you're in too. So living simultaneous
Yes.
worlds. The question, and it does come up all the time, especially in the healers, the spiritual, the helpers, the caregivers. so difficult to barter, set prices, charge
Yeah, it is.
people, even ask when it's been said and done, and then maybe the transaction hasn't been completed. It's like they don't want to. It's the uncomfortableness. Does this have to do with our own worth and value, or is it again just what we're comparing it to?
Well, yeah, I mean, how do you set the value on spiritual knowledge,
Hmm.
right? How do you set a value on somebody who can actually, through very simple means, bring you back to a state of health? I mean, how do you put a value on that, right? You can't really, right? So
Yeah,
we're
you can't.
forced to reduce it. Forced to reduce it into an economic system so that we can exchange stuff. So I can give my teaching and I can, eat and, keep the lights on. Right? Um, then for the people who are deeply spiritual, it becomes very difficult. How do I function in a world that is not spiritual, that is greedy, that is just wanting to get as much as it possibly can, right? I've had people tell me, "Gee, you should be charging, $25,000 coaching program." I said, and then the only people who get it are the ones who 25,000 bucks. What about all the other people that need it, right?
Yeah.
But on the same hand, I'm going through this right now, right? In order to grow to the point of greater having a greater impact and reaching more people, I need to charge more than I have been. I keep things extremely cheap, including this for free, right? And 2.5 hours of that song every week for free, right? I keep my courses very, very minimal in price. Does that because I don't value the work, right? Is what I'm doing less valuable than what some Wall Street broker is doing? No, it's a million times more valuable, right? But the culture doesn't value it, right? And and then people will criticize us. Jay pointed out there, people will criticize somebody like Eckhart Tolle, um, who charges more, right? Anybody who charges, right,
Is
is
expensive.
suddenly, yeah. And in if I was living in India, people would bringing me, fruit and vegetables and rice and stuff. It'd be fine.
All right.
I have enough pocket change for a chai, right?
They'll bring you that too.
But they bring that too. It's a completely different culture. So everything gets lumped together in the marketplace, right? So I'm selling my teaching, right, in a marketplace that was not built for, has no way of valuing spirituality, spiritual teaching, this kind of in within economic terms. It's how do you value something that really is beyond it, that's priceless, that can save your life, that can change everything for the better, that has all the answers to the world's problems. How do you value that? How do you put a price tag on that?
Yeah. And that's and I'm loving how we're looking at it's that the systems aren't there to support it. So that's why there's conflict. That's why
Yes.
we can explore, which is wonderful. I love the self inquiry where we start about asking what are our own beliefs, what are our conditionings, and it's not just us now because we are interacting. We are a part of this marketplace, this world,
Yes.
and this is where that in a reconciliation, it's you we can do that work, but now the conflict is are we down to can how much of an influence do we have that we can help restructure the world marketplace to what is the currency of a truly fulfilled life?
Yeah.
Big
Yes.
job.
Yeah. Um, well, the only way you can do it, none of us have any kind of political clout, right?
Right.
Maybe somebody can get into the position of being influential. And I know of a few people in other countries where younger members of their government, right, are actually more aware. And I know a couple of people who are coaching members of their particular government about this kind of stuff. Right. So there is that, but for the most part it isn't like that. um, so we don't really have any influence. Let's assume that you and I have zero influence on the
I'm gonna
process,
go with
right?
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in fact, in the U.S., the statistics have shown that clearly for the last 30 years, the people of the United States have had zero influence on policy.
Absolutely.
Zero.
Yeah.
Despite all the voting and all this kind of stuff, they have zero influence
The
on
illusion
policy.
of choice.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start from the fact that we have no political clout, right? So what do we have left? Well, we have the power of values that are attached to something real. Money isn't real. It has no absolute value, right? And
Mhm.
therefore it just kind of fluctuates around. It is whatever we say it is, right? And so it will reflect whatever we value. And of course, it's kind of a strange thing, right? So it's wealth, it's the accumulation, it's having more than somebody else. That's what matters. And money is what keeps score, right? So what values can we bring to it? Well, I use a very simple value system. What's the most loving thing in the moment?
In the moment.
Love. What else has intrinsic value? Everybody knows what love is, right? Everybody knows it when they see it. We know it when we don't see it, right? We have an intuitive sense of what is loving. Now, if I'm not afraid for my own survival, what happens? I start thinking about others. I don't think about others when I'm threatened, right? At that moment, everything begins to just become very constricted, right? And I have to survive, right? I'm the trapped animal, right? But when I begin to when I begin to feel safe, I very naturally want everybody to feel that. There's a very natural sense of community that opens up. Now, when the interaction with the community is what creates safety, right? You've got the perfect pattern, right? We become safe together
Hmm.
by serving the interests of the whole. Right? Now, the way we have to do that is we have to watch ourselves. We have to set the example through just our everyday choices. What do I buy? What do I use? What do I eat? What do I talk about? What do I consume in my head? Right? Where do I put the emphasis of things? Everything should reflect a value system that is not greed, right? And the opposite of greed is charity.
Yeah. That.
It's
Yeah.
like charity and community and the notion that we are all in this together. And for the first time in human history, that's actually a concrete universal fact, because we are all threatened by what's happening to the environment.
Yes. Yeah. It's what you said. If the lungs were to say, "I'm not sharing," you're in trouble. Right? So
Yes, the lungs don't last either.
yes, and they'll eventually die as well. Um,
Yep.
the one of the weird fears that I think often come up, it's not even just about so in myself, student Lisa, um, is and this is one thing from my mother, and I'd be really excited. When I was younger, I'd get this big contractor job or something, or be really happy, and then she would say, "But what about retirement?" And I'd be like 20 years old. I'm like, what? I just let me focus on that. Can I not worry about that yet? You've got to focus on retirement. I was like, I might die, but there's now it spans family, taking care of yourself, taking care of the family, and then your own self later. So because
Yes.
where does that stop? Like, because then I think, okay, well, I have enough now, but I better save for myself for later. Is that greed if I have a retirement fund?
Well, no, not necessarily greed, but notice the cultural value that's buried in there that you don't see.
Ooh, what is
You're
it?
not thinking about it, back, a million years ago. Nobody worked for their retirement. It was
Right.
a communal thing. Everybody was taken care of from cradle to grave, and at various points in your life, you could do more or less. Right? Even lions, when the lions get old, right? and they go to hunt because the old ones can't chase things down anymore. They position themselves in a way the younger ones chase the prey, and these guys will just sit there and roar to scare them back towards the right. So the old guys, the old hunters have their place as well. It becomes about wisdom, and like, notice that you're not asking how are we going to do retirement, how am I going to do it. That's the influence of the culture right there.
So from there's the biggest
It
first.
shouldn't even come up as a question
Right.
in an actual in a culture that had the right value system. That wouldn't even come up as a question,
Right. It'd be weird, I
because
think. Yeah.
you don't have to get your share, right?
Right.
It's us. Right.
Mhm.
Georgia Monbiot, yeah, put it beautifully. He talked about it. It needs to. Right now, we live in the world of private luxury and public. How did he put it? And public enough, right? And it should be the other way around. It should be public luxury and private enough. There's no reason for somebody to have, their own swimming pool and tennis courts and 5-car garage, right? There's no need for it, right? And of course, if the more people want to do that, there's only so many resources to go around. The Earth is an infinite system only if it's well managed. Otherwise, it's not. Right? And so, what should be? Well, you should have beautiful, huge, luxurious public pools, right? And museums and tennis courts. And, that's where all the wealth should be. The wealth of a society should be expressed in its public sector, not by the individuals who are hoarding it, right? Not a bunch of guys out in the Hamptons. Give me a break.
And it makes me question and wonder, okay, so when did this private luxury really take over? And for me, I would think, like, in my mind right now, inquiring, why would I want private luxury? And my first thing was, I'd be like, oh, I'd like some privacy, not private, but privacy, because maybe there's something I'm not comfortable with. Maybe I don't want to go out in my bikini in front of people, but then that's like, then I'm separating myself because perhaps there's issues that we think we're not accepted by others. We are different than others, or
Yeah.
we want to boast and say, well, I have my own, I don't know. It's like it's all, I see what you're saying though. It's that I to we is where like, it's
Yes.
funny that, talking about money, and we're down to the I and the we and the me and the us. It shouldn't,
Yes.
yeah.
I, we, me, us. Yes. We're in the age of I, right?
Yeah.
And the whole self-help movement and law of attraction and that just put it on steroids. I'm going to attract into my life, and I have all this great things. And if you don't, well, you did it, right?
Right.
There's no thought of we in that at all, right? And we can't survive as a bunch of eyes. You can't survive it. A bunch of egos fighting each other over resources. But you take that out of the picture, and there's more than enough for everyone. And then you even ask, well, why do I feel uncomfortable in front of other people in a bikini? Right? Where did that come from? Right? Right? And you begin to look at how this value system has compounded over time. That's separated, that's criticized, that's judged, and holds people in different esteem. Not when people aren't accepted, they're not loved. You can see that that value of separation and ego, right, is pervasive through the entire thing. And so it's all about me proving my worth, and I do that by being better than you. Imagine if maybe I said this last week, but it just sticks in my craw. Those 3 man babies, right, who went to space, on a joyride. They could have created a self-sustaining community for literally hundreds of thousands of people. That with one investment that would have made it self-sustaining for forever. And instead, right, and then people will pay $28 million to go take a ride with them. It's like it's a completely sick set of values.
We are talking about money and the greed and then that particular example leads me to think that question that we're asked when we're little: would you pick fame or fortune? And can we be greedy? Can greed exist in fame? Because to me,
Mhm.
that they would want their name in the papers and people know about them and oh, you're you, and that so it's fame. Is there a greed seed in fame?
Oh, sure. Celebrity is a currency.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's all currencies. Yeah,
Yes, it is.
the seeking of celebrity. I want to be a YouTube star, right?
Mhm.
A YouTube influencer, right? Whatever the currency happens to be, right? Whenever you're reaching outside of yourself for something, you're in greed. Whenever you think there's something out there that is going to make a difference in here, you are in the state of greed, and that's why it becomes so destructive, because this thing never gets filled up, right? I get it, and if I think that something's supposed to give me that, I'm going to want more, and more, and more, and more, and then you end up with multi-billionaires who still want more.
Right. Yes.
They're
Yeah.
not satisfied. How can they be? The basic value is off. None of that stuff will actually satisfy you.
So are we talking even the smallest of little things? Like I can share that like my can opener broke the other day and I was like, "Ugh, I gotta get a better can opener. Well, first I have to get a can opener and then I want to get a better, but does that mean no, I should be with a knife and poking it out instead? Or are there's
No, no. And
what
people
about
want to
the
do that.
without?
Okay, go without. I'm going to go without, right? And it's like,
Right.
I've pointed out before, I cannot go out without enough to take care of the world,
Right.
right? But every choice I make is a reflection of my values, right? I wouldn't buy an electric can opener. It's
Well,
completely wasted time,
now
right?
if your hydro power went out, you'd be sure hungry if you did if you
Yeah.
wanted that can.
And then I go, well, how much canned food do I want to eat at all, right? As
Right.
opposed to fresh food, right? I mean, you realize that our values are reflected in absolutely everything. You want to know what you believe, you want to know what you feel is important. Look at what you spend your money on and where you put your time.
Oh, I like
That
that
is your
question.
value system, period.
Oh, that was fun, guys. Okay, let's think about that again. Like that's everybody. That's your exercise for today. Is that look at where you spend your money, and where you spend or invest your time. And
Yes.
yeah, yes, because there are things that you could sit right, GP. You and I could sit beside each other, and you'd be like, I would never spend any money on that, and I could say I would never spend it, but because those are our
Yeah,
values and what's different to
correct.
us.
I don't
And
spend money on earrings.
I know.
But I can't imagine you without them.
I
So,
know it's really odd.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
you see, it's not about, oh, you should have that. That's the
right,
way, religion, morality try to get it. You shouldn't have that, right?
right.
And you
So
get
we're
to the early Puritans of this country that only wore black, right?
yes,
Never have nothing for, the Amish still live that way, right?
right.
They just never, and so they it's been prescribed what you should and should not want, which is of course this is the opposite. This is where nothing but we, right?
Mm-hmm.
No I at all. There's no individuality allowed. All individuality is snuffed out, right? It has to be a flow between the two. The we honors the I because it's made of eyes, right?
Yes.
But my willingness to take what I have, my own gifts, and make it a gift to the community as a whole, and the community honors that gift. Now you've got a culture and a society in which everybody can grow to the levels they're capable of. Everybody makes a contribution. There's nothing like there's the value is not that somebody's is better than another, because everything is contributing. And obviously there are people who are stellar in what they do. Not everybody can be a Mozart, right? uh, but if everybody has that opportunity, then everyone is honored within it, which is the way Aboriginal cultures worked. It was always this flow between the whole and the individual. The individual was always valued because if they had a particular skill. But what do you do with that skill unless you bring it to the community to make the community better, right?
Mhm.
But now we don't do that. We don't offering it to the community. We're offering it to the market.
Yes.
And what money can I get out of it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that distinction that we're no longer bringing it to the community, but to the market. And on that note, because it's a perfect timing for this, speaking about bringing our skills and
Bring it to the mountain.
to the mountain,
Market. Yeah.
because we are here at Home School Live, so it's recess time, and I've got my little bell here. It's such a pretty little one too, and I'll have to show you there, GP. And so and
This is
recess
the
time.
surprise you told me you had for me.
Thank you. I wanted to figure out a way to do a commercial break, but it's kind of, but we talk about, so yes, this is recess time. And during recess, we need to have activities and action. So I thought this would be a great way to talk about not just a course in action, but a course in awareness. And GP, you have pulled your skills together, and with, we're trying to help you bring it to the community. And so I wanted to use recess time to highlight a particular course in action, a course in awareness, that fits well with our theme of, which is money today. And I was going to talk about one of your other courses that was coming up, but I'm really am feeling like one of the best courses of action, courses of awareness that we can take right now is that, what do I believe? What are my conditionings? Who am I? Like, it's really back to the self-inquiry and the yoga of allowing. I know we've talked about this now on a couple of shows, but this one, it just feels like we're there again. And so
Here we
I
are.
like to,
It all starts there.
yeah, just on that one note, we'll do 30 seconds. This is our recess, everybody. Just 30 seconds on beginning to allow this self-inquiry process, how it really is the foundation.
Yes. In order to be able to come to terms with, we've all been infected by our cultural values, right? And to the degree we don't even know we have them, right?
Right.
Which means we've all been infected by the cultural greed, right? And we can either react to it or we can indulge in it, right? But the third option is to transcend it, to come to know. And the way you do that is by finding out what your values are. And those have to be discovered inherently. Not somebody said, okay, you need to be spiritual, so you need to be more loving. That's as much as an imposition from the outside is you need to get a degree and make a lot of money. There is no difference in terms of the relationship to you. You are conforming your mind to some other prescribed idea of what you should be like. Again, this is a complete denial of yourself. Even though it looks like you're serving yourself, it's actually a denial of yourself. So you have to get cut through all the conditioning to get to, what do I care about? What do I need? What do I love? And if you get to that, your desires, when they fulfill themselves, will be fulfilling. It won't be, that's not, and reaching for something else. Because if you don't know who this is, it doesn't matter. You're only going to be grasping for things according to who you're not. But when you know who you are, you begin to trust your own desires. You trust your impulses, right? You trust, which can opener you're going to get, right? Because it's congruent with your own nature. And the way to get that starts with becoming comfortable with your own feelings. That's the only way you can whittle yourself through the conditioning down to the center of you, where you find you. And that's what allowing is. It isn't like, it's okay that whatever happens, they're destroying the climate. Oh, I'm going to allow it. It's not that at all. It is the allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling, but it's not so passive that I'm just going to feel it. In that, what happens is there's a wisdom that begins to awaken, a discernment that begins to awaken. I don't really feel this. I was taught to feel this way. This isn't what I really love. This isn't what I really care about. Right? So what do I care about? And you just keep probing. And the only way I know to do that is starting with simply allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling when you're feeling it.
Okay. Yes. I
And
love that.
when you do that, something inside begins to open. Because when you do that, that act of allowing creates an inner sense of safety that you've never known before.
Mm.
Allowing is unconditional love. That's what it is.
Mm. And thank you for that. It's funny because it's interesting to ask. Okay, so where do we start? How do I do this? What is the course of action, course of awareness? So I really wanted to have a moment to be able to go there, because we've got lovely people, which we're going to read some of the comments and questions now. But um, the knowing, yeah, where to start and where to go, I think, is the biggest thing. So we always invite you to the website, because really on the website you can poke around and find everything. So if you go to gpwalsh.com, I mean, that's, you get to explore. But if some of these names seem familiar, like, oh, the yoga of allowing, oh right, they talked about this, or oh, inner reconciliation, oh, another big one, which we're wrapping up soon, in fact. um
Yes.
these make you feel a little bit more comfortable to navigate when you do go onto the site. But the first thing is to at least go there, because when we're talking about things like money, the love of it, the hate of it, how do we let it flow? It's sometimes you go, okay, I get all that, but where do I start? So that's just that we want to invite you to the site to explore, and just to keep showing up for the flow that we do every Tuesday, or join GP on Satsang on Sundays, and we'll get you all the times and everything. But just sign up for the light letter, which is the newsletter, but a light letter, and that
Yes.
way you won't miss out on anything. But that recess is over. I'm gonna go
Back in your seats. Back in your seats, people.
and back to some now. I'm gonna have to get a little bit better at reading comments and paying attention and listening all at the same time. So this is where I can go back through and see if there's something that I can ask. Bernadette definitely does not want her own pool. It's too much work. I agree. I don't want that.
One of my favorite quotes from Stephen Wright. You can't have it all. Where would you put it?
Yeah. I love that.
It's like, yeah, I mean, yes.
Yes. This first thing I think about with a big house, I go, what? Windows? Nope. Too many windows to
Oh,
clean.
good Lord. I'm annoyed cleaning my little apartment.
Yes, exactly. All right. So, Mark is the thing. You know what? I'm so grateful that there are people out there. I don't know if you are familiar, but Tasha Silver's. I have actually heard It's Not Your Money.
Hmm.
I've heard of this book. I'm not super familiar, but thank you for sharing that. And craving. That's an interesting thing. I'm gonna actually use that. Grasping already. Craving. That's a desire, but it feels uncontrolled, not really known about. Do we have cravings when we really aren't sure who we are, and there's still some exploring to be done?
Yes. Craving is when the desire is for something, but the underlying belief is that I'm not enough and that this will somehow satisfy me. And so that craving is being in the sense of not being enough and thinking something is going to do it for you. And then the thing becomes very important. Your life revolves around that. And 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 from the moment that craving arises to the time where you either give up on it because you don't get it and it gets too painful, or you do get it and you enjoy a moment of happiness before it fades, that's suffering. Craving is suffering.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Right? It even feels that way, doesn't it? It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
Golan, right? My precious, right?
Yes. Yeah. It doesn't feel comfortable. It certainly, yes. And yeah, so if we end suffering and be happy, that would mean there really wouldn't be any cravings. There wouldn't be any of that.
There would just be pure desire.
Right. Yes.
There'd just be the natural, pure desires of life. And the real desires of life, when they're satisfied, you're satisfied, you're done. When you eat, you don't keep eating. Some people do, that's gluttony,
Yeah.
and a lot of us eat for emotional reasons, therefore we eat more than we actually need to. But if those emotional needs have really been met through self-knowledge, then your body knows how much food it needs. It eats it, you're done. It's done. It's satisfied, right?
Yeah.
That's the real nature of desires. We have desires for companionship. We have desires to express ourselves, right? All of those things can be fulfilled. and you realize that they're not that hard to fulfill.
Yeah.
And when it's genuine like that, it is fulfilled. It doesn't leave, this isn't it. Because that feeling, this isn't it, is never for anything. When
Oh,
this is full, the desire is for the thing.
right.
Until that time, it's a compensation for my own lack of self-awareness, self-knowledge, and self-love.
Hmm.
That is something that can never be filled by anything. And then people think, oh, the desireless state then is just this, I just sit around chanting Om all day. No, what it means is there's no attachment to the desire. Therefore, every desire is natural and actually can fulfill itself.
Ah, that's a good point you bring up, because you're right. People say, I used to have a battle with the word contentment, because people used to use that in a negative way. Oh, you're just content to just be happy because. Yep, I am. No reason.
That's
But
right.
that's a lot of people think, oh, great, I'll have no passions, no goals if I. Yes, they look at not craving, not having a goal, not being like really unsatisfactory. Like you've given up on life. You're just gonna be content and happy and blissful and all this stuff, and that's the
Yes.
money just comes in there. Hmm.
Yes. Yeah, that's what drives billionaires. Yeah, somebody to just keep wanting to get more and more, accumulating more and more, more and more and more, because they're not happy.
Right.
Right? That makes greed. Right. Right. If there's a happiness there, there's a fulfillment. Then enough isn't. I've got enough. I'm good. Right.
Right. Yes.
And then any excess becomes, well, what I do with this. Right.
Right.
And it naturally just flows back into the community. Right. It gets contributed to the whole. Somebody who doesn't have enough in this moment, suddenly you become their enough. Right.
Right.
And it's a beautiful way we survive together.
Okay, it's huge question coming now, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I think something clicked there. Of course, it always does. We like this. Is once we know what we need, what isn't enough for us, where that is. My question coming up around this is, we also need to know what to do with money, because, and I can remember this very clearly. I didn't need money. I was a child. I was being taken care of by my family and community, and I remember I worked for our family business, and I remember getting paid, and I gave it back and said, "Oh, I don't need it. Actually, you keep it." And my father said, "No, you earned this. This is yours. Take it." But I didn't. I was still too young. I didn't know what to do with it, because even if I had enough, I could have accepted it. But then maybe I wanted to send it to the cat shelter or something. But because I didn't know what to do with it, I did. And I know I didn't need it. I had everything. So is that
Mhm.
something we can also learn in self inquiry, once we know who we are and what our true needs are and what enough is for us? Then should we start learning what to do with money, or does that happen naturally?
Um, well, some of it is practical, right? Just kind of how
Yeah.
to function within the particular system and that sort of thing. But it basically comes down to, well, I don't need it. Then what do I do with it?
Yeah.
Right. And now you're looking at something that has a completely different meaning now, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, money becomes a concrete expression of appreciation. You see it like that. You did something for somebody, and they appreciated what you did, and that took the form of money. Could have taken the form of a thank you or a pie or anything, but it takes the form of money, right? The pie is something you use, maybe you share, right? And then it's done. And the money, and you take it. Okay, now what do you do with that? Well, you need something, and somebody has it to offer. So they give you your gift. You give them your appreciation. I call that the flow of money. That's the money body,
Yeah.
right? It's I give my gifts out. I get appreciation back. I give my appreciation out. And I get gifts back.
Yes.
And that's a perfect flow. It's the heart feeds every cell,
Mhm.
right? Right now, but if I'm going to hold on to it now, right, that flow is stopped. There's a kink in the hose now, right, and it's going to back up, right, and it's going to affect everything else. And if I get bitter about it, it's not appreciated. I gotta pay this bill, right? Right. That's a block that clutters up the flow. Now money has a different meaning. In the model I just put out there, money is simply a vehicle of expression, nothing more. And it's a useful one. It's one we've agreed on. It's clear as day to me that we can create a very well-functioning culture and society that does not use money. It doesn't need, we don't need it. Right. But at present, this is the system we have for as long as we have it. And so our job is to elevate it, right? Is to redeem money from greed, right? And of course, to do that, you have to transcend your own greed. And this is a very practical thing. It's in every choice we make, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So what do I do with that $5? Get a latte? Sometimes yes.
Yes.
Sometimes no, right? Because there's people working in the little place where I get a latte, right?
Yeah.
Right? And they get it, and they get a tip, and I give them my appreciation, and they give me a latte, right? It's it's obviously consumable. It's not, it's not something that's going to be perpetuated, right? And I keep it to myself. It's my latte.
Yeah.
But
I like the word.
I'm really straining here because I don't feel like I've nailed it yet, right? Because this is so amorphous, and money is so confusing. It has so many different messages, and most of the time we're reactive about it, right? Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is. And when you look at the word love, it's talking about what you value, right?
Right.
When what you value is money over people, over anything else, then you get Wall Street, which is not concerned about the quality or what services are being delivered to a particular group, how it's improving the world, how it's improving the culture. It's only about the money itself. And yes, it is the root of all evil. It is what is causing the destruction of the planet. It's behind every single war, bar none, right? The the largest the U.S. The U.S. is the largest exporter of weapons in the world. It's our biggest industry, right? It's a money maker. So we want to have war to make money. You can see how sick that gets because money has no intrinsic value. It is exactly what we say it is and nothing more. So we have to find a place that has, does inherent value live? And that's in you. You get to say that. That makes you the authority for the whole world. Because you have something the world doesn't have, and that is enough.
Oh, I like that. That was actually really good. So can we transcend that thought, that belief, then that transcend the conditions, so that we still can have money in this world, but just retitle it. We're renaming
Right.
it.
When you have transcended it, now you get control over the system. When you haven't, the system is controlling you. Right. Now I have control over the system because the system was created by us, and it's supposed to serve us, right? It isn't anymore. We are serving the system. But when you have transcended that, now the system becomes your servant again, right? And now you can change it. When it isn't working anymore, you just change it. You make the adjustment because it doesn't serve our interests anymore. But when the system is predominant, which is what money has, you and I have to serve it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big switch. Krishnamurti talked about that. Geez, 50 years ago. Are we going to become the servants of the system, or is the system going to serve us?
That was big for me right there, because yes, you can feel that. If we're talking about getting good at feeling here, and just knowing what we're feeling, if we feel like we are a slave or workers employed by just to get this, then that system's not working, so
It's not working.
I like
Yeah.
that we get control over the system. We can create how the system's going to be working.
We made it. We made this. We invented money, for crying out loud.
fall out of the sky.
It didn't fall out of the sky, although there's a lot of preachers that like to tell you, this is God's way of doing it, right? It's nonsense. We've invented it.
Right.
We can do whatever we want with it.
Yeah. So if there's, I'm gonna see if there's a specific question about this, but I like that part right there. First of all, I love the feeling, how we feel about it, and because the enough is in us, and
Yes.
we don't know if enough money is enough money unless we feel and know that the enough is already satisfied.
Yeah, the money can't tell you that.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. The $1,000,000
Have a
doesn't say it's over
conversation
there.
with a $5 bill, right?
Mm,
Are you enough? The money's not going to answer. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
right. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
It's very personal. This is and not an I thing. It's personal in knowing
Yeah.
how we are
Yes.
feeling, so that how we are even connecting with others around money. And I would love to know if anybody else has an inside job. Yes, abundance really is an inside job. That's when you get
Yes,
paid the
it
most.
is. Yes, that's right. I'm very highly paid inside.
The one thing I do want to make sure that we did help out cover and stuff, because when we're talking about value and an exchange and charging people, I mean, there's so many other things. It's no longer about money. But let's wrap that one up with a nice little bow on it too, because we just, like, we went into that to revisit it. If you are trying to figure out how much to charge, who to charge, how comfortable you are, really, where does that begin? Because it's not about, I have to get comfortable with money. You're not going to have that conversation with money and feel better. So
No. Yeah, and to be really wise about it, I have my value system, and I just recently raised the prices of a private session with me. Now that was driven by community, not by me personally, right? Because I have students now that want to take on clients, and they don't want to charge more than me, right? Now, I don't have many desires. I live in a very small. I live really quite a monk-like life, right? I just don't have. They're just. They're just. I don't have it. I'm not raising a family anymore. I don't need all these kinds of things. But there are people that are, and so they can't. They can't charge what I charge, and I just set the charge based on what I need, right?
I like that.
And a little bit extra. Anything more than what you need is by definition wealth, right? It's excess, right? So I charge what I need, but now I have to charge not just based on what I need, but on what the whole community we're building here needs, right?
Yes.
And being the leader of this community, I've got to set the pace, right? And so I'm looking at all my courses and all that and those sort of things, because other people will. I'm trying to create teachers, right? But I can't, create a teacher who, has got a mortgage and two kids and stuff, and they cannot charge the same thing I do. Some guy who lives alone in a small house, in a small apartment, right?
Yeah.
So this is where you find this is how you find the values, right? But the values aren't just me at that point, right? If it was just me, yeah, I don't care. I'll just live in Thailand in the middle of nowhere. Give me an internet connection. I don't have to charge anything, right? I'd prefer not to charge anything. How can you charge for the air, right? I mean, it's like, this is spiritual truth. It's not anybody's property, right? But again, I have to make the system work for me, right? And this is the current system. So this is how I'm approaching it, right? And it's new territory for me, having all these people. I've always been pretty much a loner.
Nice for all of us.
Yeah. Now I have a responsibility for my new family.
So I think that is extremely helpful. And I think that for me even pulling out, I like that. It's no longer about, well, I have a skill that's valued at this much, or I've put this much investment in time in school that's this much. Oh, the standard of this industry is charging this. If we want to make the system work for us and not us work for the system, what I'm hearing is that look at what you currently do. Yeah, what do you need? What is enough for you? So that's I like that. You know what? It makes it just so heart-centered. And even if somebody says, well, why do you
Yes.
charge so much? Why charge so little? You say, this is why I charge this much, because this is what I require it for the community to work, for the system to work. And
Yes.
that's kind of a nice,
Yeah, and when you do look at what others do, look at other people who are coming from that same heart-centered place.
yes.
And how do they do it? I look at a retreat that somebody else, even my teacher Muji, it was a 5-day retreat. It was only 200, it was like $200, right?
See, and I would be like, what? That's too cheap.
Well,
But
it is. It is, right? But he also has a lot of other income from donations and that sort of thing. Now, if he does, or any spiritual teacher does a retreat where the people have to be there, well, now it's going to be like $1,500 because there's the food, there's the facility, it's a whole different kind of thing. But the amount that's actually going to the teacher himself, it remains pretty much constant, right? One of the advantages of the online is I don't have that. I don't have to rent a hall. I don't have to have all the support and the people around and all that sort of thing. Lights and cameras and stuff going on in a place. I mean, I'm looking forward to doing that again, right? Because it's really really wonderful. But there's got to be enough coming in to take care of me, and then what has to happen to everybody involved. But if you see that as an act of appreciation, and that this is part of how you create an environment for a transformational experience, what's the value of the transformational experience?
oh, I like that. Yeah. What? And then that's a tough one. Jay mentions one
Yeah.
thing I do want to say. Some people no, there are people in all industries who will actually just inch their way up. Okay, I can charge this much more, a little bit more. Oh, now nobody's buying it, or this is exactly people who can really afford it. Then they stay. Like they. Jay mentions about people can chase people away. Like if I said, oh, it's $10,000, then they're like, whoa, okay. But one person might say yes. They're sifting through and fishing for the highest paying client, so to speak, of their services. Is that on the verge of greed?
Well,
Or you're not helping many people, but
yeah, and there's a lot of people sell programs. I mean, in order to get rich as a coach, you have to have rich people as clients.
yeah,
That's simply a fact, right?
yeah,
Um, and somebody say you'd rather have one client paying $100,000 than 100 paying $1,000, right?
right.
It would be better. Well, is it? I mean, it's a matter of your own value system. When money is the value system, then obviously the more people you have who make a lot of money, the more you're one of them.
Right.
Because if I've got a bunch of people that are paying me $25,000 for I've got 20 of those, well, I'm making a lot of money. I'm very well off. Right now, what am I going to do with that money? Now, and at that point, it's like I want the house, I want the pool, I want the car, right? And yes, money is, because it is a system of value. It's part of the placement of its value, right? Right. So if somebody said, if I charge $40 for something, somebody said, it's only worth $40, right?
Right.
And if my system of value is, that's how I grade it. The more this course costs, the more it's worth. And a lot of people think that way. Well, then it's going to seem like it has more value. And if I can afford it and somebody else can't, then it's going to have more value to me, because now I'm flaunting the fact that I'm wealthy, right? And I
Yes.
can afford $100,000 coaching program, right? And so
Yes.
I need that, right? Because I'm in this position. And there's a lot of people that if they wouldn't take my courses because I don't charge enough. They need the prestige of that kind of recognition. That's where they'll drive a Mercedes or a BMW or a Bentley, or if they're really stellar, a McLaren or something like that. A $3 million sports car you can't really drive on the road, right? Or I have my $80 million yacht.
And that is something interesting too. Some people will which is again like what we were just saying there. Some people have not taken your courses because they feel you don't charge them, so you're not as you're the run of the mill, you're ordinary, so that must not be
Yes.
for them. So that comes down to the status, the celebrity, back to our value system. And that's why I was excited to have this conversation about money. And it's all these subtle things that we're thinking about and piecing together when it comes to money. It's not just this like, oh, we're just going to talk about money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like always, what people want is a checklist,
yeah.
right? This bad, this good, right? So I'm going to align with the good, and nobody wants to hear. Nobody wants to hear. No, you're going to have to figure out what those check marks are, and they can only come from you, right? And anything. I don't care how good it is, if it's asserted from externally, if it's from the outside, it's not you. It's not real. If you in discovering your own values, you find that one is a value, but now it's different, right? If it's, thou shalt not, right? Thou shalt not lie, right? So I'm not going to lie, right? I'm going to follow that. Well, I'm going to, there's some, so you can, it's all right here, right? Now it becomes this legalistic thing. But if I discover through my own experience the consequences of lying, right? What happens, right? How that feels, I now know. I have got my own thou shalt not. I don't need anybody to tell me that. And at that point, what we call the law is written in your heart, but it's a self-discovery. And therefore, it's self-enforced, which means it isn't law anymore at all. It really is. You've discovered an inherent truth. This is a better way to be than that. Not because somebody told me so, because I saw the consequences with my own eyes. And I'm choosing to not participate in that anymore. This is the only way you become really moral. Nobody becomes moral because they obeyed the rules.
Yeah.
Because they broke them and suffered as a result. And not an artificial suffering. You're going to go to hell, or you're getting a speeding ticket. I'm not talking about that's artificially imposed consequences. I'm talking about the natural consequences of 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 obeying or not obeying your own heart.
Yes. Yeah. Not a penalty. Yeah. I like
Yeah.
that.
God is not punitive. God is corrective.
Oh. Well, this has been an interesting money episode. I love the different things that come up and the thoughts and pulling it all together here. And thank you everybody who's, made some comments, and I'm laughing at a couple fun ones too. Why can't people charge more than GP? Feels a bit cultish to me.
Well, they can't. They absolutely can.
Of course,
Right.
yeah.
But they feel uncomfortable about it.
Yes.
They came to me. They feel uncomfortable charging more than the teacher. And part of the role as leader is to attempt to define the relationship with the culture and with the system, right? Helping people define that for themselves. I wouldn't expect somebody. I I charge different things for different peoples in different countries, right? Some people, one of my courses is a month's salary, right? What am I supposed to do, right? I have to try to make the adjustments for that. And so it's me taking the responsibility to be the leader, right? And so they can if they want. They can charge $500. I won't try to best that. But since I'm the creator of interreconciliation, I'm kind of the one who has to set the value of it, right?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of what I have to do.
Set the value. I'm going to leave. That's a good note. Everybody, you are setting your own value, but you need to do the inquiry first. You need to know what it's. Oh, look at that. Lydia. She loves every word that she's heard today. This is wonderful. and we're excited to hear how things change in your world. If you're wanting to share, we can always come back and add your comments and anything that you think, oh, wow, I now have this new relationship with this because of this. We love to hear these stories as well. And, be with you as enlightenment happens. So, ah,
Enlightenment happens, yes.
there you go. Thank you, GP, so much. We look forward to coming here every Tuesday. This is, as I said, it's The Flow from Om School Live. We're here every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And just, yeah, we're always inviting you to be a part of this or get on that light letter. Just go to gpwalsh.com and sign up for the light letter. All right? Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.